Welcome to See You at USC. I'm your Friday night host, Mackie Kravitz, and tonight we have film critic Scott Mantz here in the studio. It's sure to be a picture-perfect episode, so be sure to stay tuned. Welcome back to See You at USC. I'm joined now by Scott Mantz himself. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. What an honor to be here at the Robert Zemeckis building, USC. Robert Zemeckis, my #1 filmmaker of all time. We're walking in, and I was thinking about how I'm going to see Allied in the next week or so. Brand new film from Robert Zemeckis. We're here in the Robert Zemeckis building, meant to be.
You got to keep me tuned on what you think of that film
Oh,
next.
I'll let you know.
I know the second segment we want to talk about Oscar contenders, so I'll leave that there. And I want to start at the beginning on what drew you to films and your earliest memory of that.
My earliest memory of a film is actually watching, okay, I know it's a cliche, but it is not the cliche you think it is. It is Logan's Run, starring Michael York, and it came out in 1976, the year before Star Wars. So it was, my parents, I got to hand it to them. They were very bold. They were very cool. They took me to the Disney films when I was a kid, but that doesn't really count. The films that they took me to in 1976, 77, 78, they took me to see The Deer Hunter. They took me to see Apocalypse Now. I remember one of the first movies I saw, remember Foul Play with Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase, Murder by Death, the 1976 version of King Kong, produced by Dino De Laurentiis. I thought it was a great film, a giant monkey. These were the films that my parents took me to. In 1980, I was 11 years old, and my folks took me to see The Shining. I mean, what were you thinking?
Bold.
Bold
move.
But it wasn't just bold. It was mean. It was mean, but kind of cool, They took me to see Apocalypse Now in 1979. I was 10 years old, and Apocalypse Now is one of my favorite films of all time. And there are other films that I saw then, back in those days, that I liked a little bit, but I grew to love them over time because I got a much deeper perspective on them. But those were the films that they showed me, and when I came of age, like in middle school and high school, then you get into Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future, the Star Trek movies. I'm a massive, massive, massive Star Trek fan. Let's just get that out of the way, okay? I love Star Trek more than Star Wars. I know.
I don't think that's the popular opinion.
I know it is not a popular opinion, but I pride myself, and as a film critic, I learned you have to pride yourself on being in the minority. And you know what? If I'm in the minority for liking Star Trek over Star Wars, that's cool. Another favorite film of mine is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Some other obscure sci-fi films like 2010, Odyssey 2, Capricorn 1, Alien is a masterpiece. These are all films that came out, and I wasn't really much of a sports guy when I was a kid, so movies were my salvation. But the thing is, I never thought I would ever pursue a career in film because I grew up in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And my folks, my family, were not creative at all. My dad was an accountant. My mother was a bank teller. My brother's an investment banker. So I never had any creative inspiration. Movies were always a hobby. And when I went away to school, I went to Penn State. I studied business administration, and I did not like the classes I was studying at all, but my electives were film. My electives, my hobby classes were film.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, you know what? I should have majored in this, but whatever, it's fine. So the irony is that everything does happen for a reason. And it was because of my business administration background that I got a job in LA in 1991. So 25 years ago, December 21st, 1991, I moved to California, and now I'm in the business and working in the business in entertainment marketing, and well, the story continues.
I actually want to comment on something you said earlier of being in the minority. You have to accept the minority, which is, I love that quote because film is so subjective. Sorry.
It absolutely is. And here's when I learned that lesson. In 2000, the film Almost Famous opened. Now, by that point, I was writing reviews for about 2 years. And when I look back to those early reviews, some of them are not written very well, but you got to start somewhere. You have to find your voice. But I learned the most important lesson of film criticism around when Almost Famous opened. And it was a film that I liked. I thought it was okay. I did not love it. It did not move me. I thought the kid played by Patrick Fugit, I thought he was very passive. And as much as I love Cameron Crowe's movies, especially Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous was not a film that I loved. And I gave it a so-so review. But then it opened, and everyone loved the movie.
Yeah.
Everyone loved Almost Famous. And I thought, what is wrong with me? And I thought about rewriting my review to give it a more positive slant. You're not supposed to do that.
No.
You're not supposed to do that. In fact, that's around when I found Rotten Tomatoes. You know what Rotten Tomatoes is?
Of course I do, yeah.
Okay, everybody knows what Rotten Tomatoes is now. But back then in 2000, I was looking for other critics online who felt the same way I did. And I came across Rotten Tomatoes, and I read the review from the San Francisco Chronicle. Mick LaSalle wrote this review of Almost Famous, in which he described Patrick Fugit's character. No offense to Patrick Fugit, he's a great actor. But in that film, the character just didn't speak to me. He described him as passive. So I thought, oh, thank God, someone else who agrees with me. So I emailed him and I said, I felt the same way about you. I thought about rewriting my review to give it a positive slant, but I didn't. So he wrote back to me and he said, wow, our reviews are very, very similar. He says, I felt bad about giving this movie not a great review because I love Cameron Crowe. I love the book that he wrote on Billy Wilder, but he told me, or emailed me, he said this in the email, in film criticism, you are a gang of one, or you're nothing at all. Don't ever feel like you have to stand side by side with the other critics, your peers, so you can be all in unison about a movie. If a movie's great or a movie's really bad, if you have an opinion and you can express why you have that opinion, you are doing your job. It does not matter if you loved it and everyone else didn't, or if you hated it and everyone else loved it. To this day, I still get some hard times. I was going to say something else. Because in 2008, everyone hated a movie that I thought was really funny, and I laughed my butt off.
What movie was it?
The Love Guru.
I know that movie.
Mike Myers.
Yes.
I thought that movie was hilarious. I mean, it's not a good film, but I was entertained. I thought it was very, very funny.
Yes.
So to this day, some of my friends, like if I come back from a film, I say, oh, it wasn't good or it was great. They're like, yeah, but you loved The Love Guru. and also another film that I loved that I wouldn't say people hated it, but it was very mixed, was Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire. It was not as good as Spider-Man 2, but I still thought it had its merits. I get why people didn't like it because of that middle scene when he's walking down the street with the black hair doing the dance. It was a little silly, but I thought it was a very ambitious film that tied all three of those films together, and I saw the good in it, and I gave it a very positive review. But people still give me a hard time about Spider-Man 3.
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
it's interesting how one becomes a critic because it is so subjective.
Yeah, it is.
Do you want to explain kind of how you got a following and how you became what you are today?
I will say this, that when you, especially these days or in the last 15, 20 years, there's no like path to follow. And in terms of how I became a film critic, it's not a path that you go to school, you graduate, you send out resumes, you get a job. What happened was, in the late 90s, I was working for an entertainment marketing company, and I wasn't really happy doing it. And I was taking all sorts of film classes at the other school, and film production, a lot in script coverage. I did coverage for William Morris for a little bit. And in the late 90s, I started reviewing films for some websites that don't even exist anymore. The Mediadrome, Big Time Hollywood, Creation Entertainment, and that was when I discovered that I don't want to make movies. I just like watching them. And I want to write about them and talk about them on camera.
Yeah.
So I kept going along that way, and I quit my job without another job, which is not something I would ever do again, by the way, because it was a big risk. But, I was younger, and I didn't have any overhead at all except for my rent. And I was sending out resumes to newspapers all over the country. And even back then, in 99, 2000, Newspapers were still having a hard time. They were letting go of critics. And here I was looking to make a living as a
Get
critic.
in it.
So a friend of mine, Scott Sheckman is his name, he said, why don't you think out of the box a little bit? Look at the broadcast. So I thought, oh, what a great idea. So I sent my reviews to Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, Extra, E, and CNN. And I get a call from Access Hollywood, and this is in September of 2000. Hey, we like your reviews and everything. We're looking for a film researcher. Is that something that would interest you? And I thought, well, at least I'll get in the door. So I said, sure. So I took the job, and it's been 16 years that I've been with Access Hollywood. And all the while on the side, while I was doing film research, and I started producing film segments like coverage of the red carpets, coverage of junkets, doing box office reports, setting up coverage for film festivals, I was always reviewing movies on the side because that's where my heart was.
So you were always watching and writing.
Always. Always. I didn't have a life for a very long time because my job kept me busy, and what little free time I had, I was home in my apartment writing reviews. So when Access Hollywood built up their website, it was actually pretty easy because they're like, oh, you're already writing reviews. Why don't you just put them on the Access Hollywood website? And that instantly made me legitimate. And I started posting my reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. And then I started doing reviews on camera. And it just sort of like mushroomed, ballooned from there. And that's why, right now, I'm still producing our film coverage, covering Sundance. I've covered Sundance for 15 years, the Toronto Film Festival, Telluride, all the other film festivals, but going on camera more often to review films, like for our live show and for our night show. And I've been on the Today Show reviewing movies. I've been on CNN and Headline News reviewing movies. That's what I love to do. And that's what sort of like built up, and I'm still doing it to this day, and I love it.
That's awesome. That's really inspirational to hear how you weren't even in film and you made it.
I mean, film was always a hobby. It was always a passion. And I could have said like, well, I wish I had studied film in school, or I wish I had moved out here and gone to USC. But it didn't work out that way, but it still did work out. Everything happens for a reason. I still found a way to make it happen. And sometimes people ask me, whether it's on Twitter or they email me directly, how can I be a film critic? Or I'm starting out as a film critic. What do you recommend? And my recommendation for aspiring film critics is this. Write your heart away. Write like crazy. Start your own website. It is very, very easy, like on WordPress or something like that.
I mean, YouTube now, you can just make a video documentary of yourself, just what you thought.
Well, here's what I think you should do. You should write, and you should also do the YouTube thing. Start your own YouTube channel. Because I think the days where you had just like Roger Ebert or Richard Roper or the LA Times, these longtime film critics like Peter Travers, they're established, so they're okay. But if you're trying to start out as a film critic, you have to be able to do other things. You have to do it in writing, you have to do it on camera, you should be able to produce, because I think that the more you can do, the more of a jack of all trades person that you can be, the more opportunities you will get.
I love that. All right, we're going to end it right there because we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we are going to hear Scott Mantz's predictions for the Oscars. So stay tuned.
The year was 1938, and the U.S. sat on the brink of another world war. The American people looked for diversion from the trials and tribulations of a new century and its new problems. In 1940, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt authorized the release of an entirely new form of entertainment.
Today, a hope of many years standing is in large part fulfilled.
It was called the Trojan Visual and Auditory Mimeograph Device, or Trojan Vision for short. As bombs fell and war was waged, society tuned to 8.1 for relief. Throughout American history, Trojan Vision has shown us the moments of America's triumphs, spreading the finest programming throughout Greater Los Angeles and worldwide online. Watch Trojan Vision and see history being made.
Welcome back to See You at USC. I'm joined by film critic Scott Mantz. And Scott, at the commercial break, we were discussing some of our favorite movies, and I know that you had a story about one of your favorites that you would like to share.
Back to the Future, I mentioned it in the last break, is absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time. It is a perfect film. It is brilliant. It is fun. It is charming. I mean, it is a perfect movie. But the thing about Back to the Future is this. It came out on July 2nd, 1985. And when I first saw the movie for the first time, I was on a date. And I was very, 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 very shy.
Hard to imagine.
I know. I mean, I was shy. And when I went on a date with this girl, Joanne, to see Back to the Future, I was very, very shy. And we were sitting in the theater, and I just was keeping my mouth shut because I was very shy and was with this pretty girl named Joanne, and I just didn't want to blow it and everything, just typical
First
angst,
date,
first
yeah.
date and jitters and everything. So then the movie starts, and you're watching the movie, and then I sit on my seat, and I know I love a film when I do this, when I sit forward in my seat and I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. This movie is amazing. So then after the film, okay, the movie's great. We all know that Back to the Future is a great movie. Classic movie, a masterpiece, brilliant, everything. And we went out for ice cream afterwards. And it was Friendly's ice cream. I don't know if there's a Friendly's out here in LA.
I've never heard of Friendly's.
Okay, Friendly's ice cream and in the Bucks County Mall. And I went from being the shy kid before the movie, I couldn't stop talking about the film. I was so excited by the movie. I was so inspired by it. I was so blown away by it. I loved the movie so much that when we were having ice cream, I was like a completely different person, and I could tell that she was digging me. Yes.
When a movie changes you.
A movie just like that, boom. But it was like that for a lot of films, like Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Again, major Star Trek fan, but that's just a great movie, period. But anyway, so it just so many great movies that like Blade Runner is a film that when it came out in 1982, June of 1982, the same month as Wrath of Khan, Poltergeist, E.T., and The Thing.
Wow.
June of 1982 was like one of the greatest months ever for sci-fi. But Blade Runner, I didn't really grow to love it until 10 years after the fact because I was 13 when I saw it. I didn't get it. Moved out to LA, I saw the 10th anniversary edition without the voiceover, and I was blown away by it. And then when I saw it again in 2007 for the 25th anniversary, I was like, this movie is a masterpiece. It looks like it could have been shot today. And now they're doing a sequel to it. Funny story, real quick, is a couple years ago, I had to renew my driver's license. So my new driver's license expires in November of 2019, which is when Blade Runner takes place. Oh my God!
Well, weird coincidences.
I mean, the movie came out in 82, and you're like, oh, 2019, it's so far away.
Yeah.
My license expires in November of 2019. So, man, time just does fly.
Time really
doesn't it?
does. And I love what you were mentioning earlier, how film can really be endless and timeless, and it just never gets old.
It never gets old. I love movies. You know, when I first started working for Access Hollywood, a friend of mine there was like, now that movies are your job, I hope you don't lose your passion for them. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. You know, because when your hobby becomes your job, you lose the hobby. Never happened. I love going to the movies. I see like 300 movies a year. maybe 350 sometimes. And I love it. This feeling is always the same when you're sitting in the theater and then the lights come down. You're just like, oh, great.
It's salvation.
Except this summer was a little rough.
Yes, I want to talk about that. Let's talk about the summer 16 flops.
It was one flop after another. I mean, the two best Hollywood blockbuster type movies of the summer were Captain America: Civil War and Star Trek Beyond. But you had so many bad movies. X-Men Apocalypse was, it was okay, but Alice Through the Looking Glass was bad. Independence Day 2 was bad. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Did we need another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? The Ghostbusters reboot was not that great. And it was like every weekend, one weekend after another, just all these bad films. And I just felt like, I can't remember the last time I had a summer, or that we had a summer, where it was just such a massive disappointment.
I mean, summer's always such a great time to release movies. Everyone's going to the movies, no one's in school, stuff like that. And we were doing some research in the production office, and Finding Dory was the top grossing movie of the summer, and it was still $200 million behind Jurassic World last summer.
Is that right? Wow,
Yes.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. It was also.
Did I just teach you something?
You did. Give it up. Nice.
Yes!
Also, the thing about Finding Dory, it's Pixar. Usually they are batting 1,000, except for Cars 2 and Monsters University. Those movies weren't so great. Finding Dory was just okay. I liked it. It wasn't as good as Finding Nemo, and it definitely wasn't as good as last year's Inside Out.
Yes.
That was brilliant. But, they're always independents. The independents always sort of save the day. And over the summer, we had a couple really good independent films that were great. One of them was Captain Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen. Terrific film. I think it's streaming now on iTunes if you haven't seen it.
Okay.
The other was Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and Ben Foster and Jeff Bridges. This is one of the best movies of the year. It's going to be in a lot of top 10 lists, and it should be nominated for Best Picture. I don't know if it will, but it should.
Yeah, I did see that on our little Oscar nom sheet that we looked up.
Yep.
Speaking of the Oscars,
Yes.
let's talk about those films, because there's some highly anticipated films coming out in this next month or two.
The next, I would say 7 weeks, you are going to see the movie that is going to win Best Picture. Among those possibilities, one of them is out now. It's called Moonlight. Directed by Barry Jenkins. It is a coming-of-age story about sexual awakening of a young boy. It's sort of a cross between Boyhood and Brokeback Mountain by way of Boys in the Hood. I know that's kind of crazy, but when you see the film, you know what I mean.
We did see the trailer. It was very intriguing.
Moonlight is one of the year's best movies. Absolute contender, frontrunner for Best Picture, Director, Screenplay, Supporting Actors. Not just one, but a few, and Supporting Actress. It's fantastic. Also, movie Bleed for this with Miles Teller as Vinny Paz, a boxer who broke his neck basically and still came back to win a middleweight championship based on a true story. And it's Miles Teller plays Vinny Paz, and he was, remember Whiplash?
Yes.
Miles Teller is a great actor. I mean, he is fantastic. Fences with Denzel Washington, his third movie as a director.
Which is also an adaptation of a play by August Wilson.
Right, Pulitzer Prize-winning play in which Denzel played the stage. And I'm actually seeing that movie tomorrow night. And I'm very, very excited to see that. But I'm hearing really, really great things about it. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of Manchester by the Sea. Okay, talk about a movie. I saw Manchester by the Sea at the Sundance Film Festival, and it's Casey Affleck, and it's written and directed by Kenneth Lonergan, who did You Can Count on Me like 16 years ago. Casey Affleck is a revelation. He could win the Oscar for Best Actor. He is fantastic in this movie.
Wow.
But I know what you want to know. I know what you want to know.
I
know what you all want to know. What is the movie that is going to win Best Picture? I'm telling you right now, you're hearing it right here.
Should we drum roll?
At USC. Drum roll, please. La La Land.
Okay, that is my most anticipated movie right now. Emma Stone, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Ryan Gosling.
Sorry, Ryan Gosling.
I know, people getting confused all the time.
They're just both really dreamy looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am so excited to see that.
La La Land, I saw at the Telluride Film Festival. I've seen it 3 times now. It hasn't even opened yet. It doesn't open until, I think, December 9th. But La La Land is a musical based in LA about an aspiring actress and an aspiring jazz musician, and where they sort of go on their paths to follow their dreams. And you know what? It doesn't always work out for everybody. And it also creates tension in a relationship when people have different goals and they conflict. But it is a musical directed by Damien Chazelle, who directed Whiplash, and it's a throwback to the classic Hollywood musicals.
Singing in the Rain.
Exactly. And in fact, it is the Singing in the Rain of 2016. But it is also, so I think grown-ups are really going to embrace it because of the throwback, but it's not too much of a throwback, like let's say Moulin Rouge, you know, or something like that. It's actually very, very current, so millennials like you
Exactly.
will
Well,
get
Emma
it.
Stone is my favorite of all time.
She could win the Oscar for Best Actress.
I am pulling for her. I want it for her.
It is a fantastic movie. It has so much heart. The music is great.
John Legend, right?
John Legend is in the film, and the ending of this movie it's really going to rock your world, and is going to just leave you with so much emotion in your heart that you will cry. Best Picture, La La Land.
All right, let's leave it at that because I don't want to know too much.
All
It
right.
sounds incredible.
I would never spoil it for you.
You never spoil a movie?
Never! Never. That is a no-no.
Is that a no-no on Critic?
To spoil a movie? Never in a million years will I spoil a movie. No way.
But you wanna leave them wanting more. You
Okay,
know?
yes, you definitely want to leave them
open-ended.
wanting more. So, I mean, let them see La La Land for themselves
Yes.
because it is great. You're going to love it.
Oh, I am so ready. I've been talking about it for months.
Yep.
Trust me.
Okay.
Yeah, and everyone in our production office was talking about it. We're all excited. So before you go, we only have a few minutes left. Can you just tell us some words of advice or what you look for in a movie, really?
Wow, what I look for in a film, it just really depends. You know, it could be the acting, it could be the cinematography, it could be the pacing, but ultimately the script is the thing. If Shakespeare was here today, that's what he would say. Story, story, story. It starts with the screenplay. A movie without a good story, a special effect without a good story, okay, a special effect without a good story is a boring thing. You know who said that?
No, I do not.
George Lucas. Come on.
The master
You must say
himself.
the master himself. But I would say in terms of advice, stay focused. Stay the path. In this town, it is very easy to get distracted. It is very easy to look at things that other people have going on and to feel bad about yourself, especially on social media. You look at social media, sometimes I look at Facebook and I feel like I'm being totally not productive. But what I have to say is just focus on yourself. Follow your own path. Just really just stay true to yourself and believe in yourself and do your own thing.
I love it.
There you go.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
And be sure to watch See You at USC every weekday at 6:30 here on Trojan Vision.
You're watching Trojan Vision. For more of your favorite shows, check us out at trojanvision.com and like us on Facebook.
Here's the story of a TV manager who had a team to help out with